Hey y'all, welcome back to Poplar Creek Farms. Today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about vermicomposting. So if you don't know what vermicomposting is, it's composting with worms. Here is my giant worm bin, and I know it's super cool and everybody hopes and dreams to have worms in their house, right? Okay, maybe not. It's kind of disgusting if you think about it, but honestly, worms are the coolest thing. Once you get used to having the idea of having worms in your house, it is so cool. They are amazing, amazing creatures, and these are not just any old worms. They're called red wigglers. They are specifically composting worms. If you've had a compost in your backyard, if you've had it for a while, sometimes they'll show up anyways, naturally. And they're those bright red worms, but they're small. They're smaller than earthworms. They're sometimes even like a quarter of the size. And sorry, my cats are playing. And they aren't like earthworms in the sense earthworms eat dirt. Earthworms break down dirt. They break down fresh soil. They don't break down compost. These worms are specifically designed to break down compost. They eat scraps, vegetable scraps, that kind of thing. And so they are actually in the top layer of soil typically. The soil has to be relatively warm for them to be in it. So summertime, they're in the top layer of soil. Wintertime, they probably burrow down deeper. So you can't directly put them in your soil or in your compost, especially if you live in the northern region like I do. Also, in the summer, in the southern region, they can get too hot. They can actually get overheated, so you have to kind of be careful. I do have a little bit of cold, so I'm going to be sipping my tea with honey throughout the video. Alright, so as I mentioned in my last video, I'd been wanting worms for quite a while. My husband was very much against it, not because he was against composting in any way. He loves composting. He's actually like on top of the kids for composting, but it was more just the idea of worms in our house. When I got the worms, we were also living in an 800 square foot attic apartment, and we really had no place to put them other than somewhere where we would be all the time. He was concerned that they would smell, they wouldn't break stuff down fast enough, and that there would always be bugs around, and odor, and the worms would escape. So, excuse me, a couple of things that basically pretty much all those things are false. They don't smell unless you're putting in too much food or food that's rotten. They don't like rotten food, just like we don't like rotten food. They break down old food, not rotten food. So there's definitely a difference between just food that we may not consume anymore versus old food that's actually rotten. So when bananas get brown, a lot of people don't eat them. Some people will make banana bread with them, and some people just won't eat them. The worms will definitely eat those things. Also, they really don't attract bugs at all. There was maybe a few fruit flies around at one point when I was overfeeding them, but that was about it. Once I stopped overfeeding them, they were fine. And they don't really escape. The first week, I would say, they did try to escape a couple times, mostly because they have to get used to a new environment. It's a brand new home for them. And they will try to escape if their environment isn't sufficient for them. If it's too moist, if it's too hot, if it's too cold, if it's too dry, if they don't have enough food. Those are reasons they'll escape. Otherwise, they won't. The first week or so, you want to keep light on them, so you want to keep direct light. I had the lid off the first week to allow extra light in. These are ventilation holes that my husband drilled, it is light, but it's not enough light for the first week. You really want to kind of give them some direct sunlight, or direct any kind of light. We had just our bathroom light on. My cats luckily didn't try to get them, because that was definitely a concern of mine. The cats getting in there trying to get into the worms. So direct sunlight on them, or light on them the first week. Also, if they do escape, they don't make it very far. They dry up really fast. So there was one at one point that had tried to escape through one of the holes. Half of its body was out, and that half was already dried up, so they don't make it too long. So this is my upgraded bin. It's just a tote, regular tote. We've moved more times than I'd like to count, so we have tons of totes. This one is one of the big long totes, but I had a regular size tote, it's right back here. It was my initial worm bin. that right now is holding all my soil. That's going to be for starting my seeds in the next couple weeks. Worms, red wigglers will reproduce. They do not need to mate to reproduce. They are self-reproducers. They are they have both male and female parts, and so they will just continuously lay eggs. But red wigglers will not continue to lay eggs if they do not have sufficient space. So once they run out of room, they'll stop laying, or they'll cut back on their laying. So if you give them more space, they will continue to reproduce. They can double their population in 90 days. That's it, just 90 days and they can double. So I bought 4,000. So within 90 days, I could have had 8,000. Now I don't think I gave them sufficient space in the first bin to reproduce that quickly. This bin should definitely give them sufficient space because not only is it long, it is also deep. So I have plenty of space to add bedding in. So you can filter out your bedding pretty much as frequently or as infrequently as you want, but you don't want to let it go too far. So you don't want to let it go for, say a year. 6 months is about cat's tail. 6 to 8 months is about the longest you'd want it to let it go. Just because if it builds up, they're pretty much in their own poop all the time. And you don't want them to be in their own poop too much. You do want to give them fresh bedding and a fresh space to kind of create their awesome poop. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the bin and look at some awesome vermicomposting. Again, it's pretty simple. So I just set up a regular tote. My bedding was newspaper. A lot of people use core or core blocks and they break it up. Honestly, anything that is natural, which newspaper is, and that composts well, is fine. Any kind of brown compost, pretty much. You want some kind of carbon. You don't want things like wood chips just because they're a little too big. And I don't know that they would moisten up enough to keep the worms moist. When they come, they actually come in a peat moss mix, which I don't love. I won't get too much into my hatred towards peat moss, but I'm not a big fan of peat moss. They do come in a peat moss mix, though, because it wicks away moisture from the worms. If they're too moist when they're traveling, over their 2-day travel, then they could freeze if it's too cold. And I guess they can overheat in a sense from that as well. So that's how they come when you order them. I ordered them from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. He's a big one out there. I'm sure there's other options, but the price was pretty good and they shipped really fast. And I think all of them were alive except for, he does have a 100% live guarantee. I squished one in the corner of the bag when I was trying to dump them in. All right, so let's go ahead and really dive into this. All right, guys, let's look into this worm bin. So I have added some fresh newspaper in the last couple weeks just to give them new bedding because I did just transplant them into this bigger bin. So fresh newspaper on top. This is still somewhat dry, mostly because my bedding that was underneath from my last bin was a little overly moist. The bottom of it had gotten a little too wet because I had watered the bin a little extra, a little more than I should have. So we're just trying to dry out some of that old bedding that I don't want to get moldy. So I did just kind of throw some dry bedding in. Also in here, nice banana peels. They do overall like smaller chunks. So if you have a food processor that you can chop things up a little bit smaller, they will just break it down in a quarter of the time. I don't have one, so I don't. So let's look in here for some wormies, as I call them. My kids call them wormies too. So also eggshells in here. They do actually need eggshells to help break things down. It's basically like grit for chickens. It's the same idea. In their bellies, their stomach needs some of that kind of grit to break things down. Here is proof. The vermicomposting is amazing. Your little sprout. Now, I throw things from the grocery store in. So typically grocery store seeds, anything from like a pepper plant is not really going to sprout. Otherwise, if you save the seeds from it, they're not going to be as good. But they germinate in here because everything does, because it's just amazing. All right, so all of this loveliness right here. All of this. Okay, minus the newspaper. All that lovely worm poop. So all these little teeny bits. That is all worm poop right there. And that is just amazing, amazing stuff. Alright, so we gotta dig a little bit deeper to find these wormies. They're hiding out right now. I haven't been putting food in the middle, so they're probably not right in the middle here. So let's see, where are some of my wigglers? There's one. So here is, if I can get him from all the stuff. Here's one of my little red wigglers. It's a pretty small one. So I have ones that are bigger than this, a little bit bigger than this, not much bigger, but, and I have some really teeny ones that are babies, and so they're pretty awesome. Let's see if I can find some baby ones, because they're cool just because then you know that they're reproducing. Oh my goodness, so many sprouts. Alright, oh, here's another good sized one. Good sized wormy. Sorry guys, I'm disrupting your home. A lot of times you'll find them clumped up around one source of food. Oh, here they are. There's all the wormies. They're all around my lettuce that I had poured in here. Tons of them. So there's a little baby wormy. And here's some bigger wormies. All over that poop. Or all over the lettuce, making poop out of it, which is awesome. And this is all. So here's some, looks like some coffee grounds there. They do like that. There's some blueberries. And yeah, they're all clumped up over here. And you can see all over this is all worm poop, which is just awesome stuff. Awesome, awesome stuff. So let's go over the what you can put in and what you can't put in, because there's a few things you can't put in that you might put in your regular compost. Alright, so in your regular compost, what do you put in? Pretty much everything from your kitchen, right? Pretty much anything. Onions, you can put in your compost. Garlic, you can put in your regular compost. Not in here. They don't like that stuff, and they won't break it down. So really anything spicy, they don't like spicy. So any kind of like habanero peppers, jalapeno peppers, things like that, they're not going to eat them. They're just not going to like them. Potato peels, they're just not big fans of. Otherwise, pretty much anything else. Coffee grounds, you can put in here. You don't want to put in too much. So coffee grounds, you want to keep it to a minimum, maybe once or twice a week at most, especially if you fill up your whole coffee maker, or you make, you know, a good amount every day, because it makes the soil more acidic in here, and they don't like a super acidic environment. They like it more basic, so they don't prefer the coffee grounds all the time. Again, I always put newspaper in, and you can use other brown methods or brown compost. So this, I have to order supplies for my job. I'm a nurse, and I order home care supplies all the time, and it comes with these giant sheets of brown shipping paper. Those I rip up, throw them in. I moisten them a little bit because they are kind of rough. Throw them in. So here's a couple examples of things I put in. We eat tons of bananas. It's got some coffee grounds on it. Let me take that sticker off though, because the sticker, that's not compostable, and they're not going to want to eat that. So throw it in. You also want to bury the food. They don't want to come to the top to eat, and they're not going to. So you want to bury it every time you put it in. Apple core, or half an apple that my daughter left from lunch. Throw that in and bury it. And then again, coffee grounds. I throw the filter right in. I get the brown non-bleached filters, and I throw it right in. So that's all going in. Salad. We always buy more salad than we can eat. And so we end up wasting a lot of it. It sits in there, and obviously, we all know this is not salad from our garden, so it does not last very long. If it's getting kind of slimy in there, totally okay to throw in your compost, or throw in your worm bin. If it's getting really slimy and kind of stinky, not for your worm bin. That's for your compost. Throw it outside into your compost. Now, this is nice and just slimy. We'll throw that in and cover it up. And again, if you throw things in that stink and that are rotten, your compost is going to stink. We don't want this stinking. I mean, this is in my basement, but I still don't want it stinking. I don't want a stinky basement. And you don't want to, you want to have it at a decent temperature, a relatively constant temperature. They don't like to be super cold. They won't break food down as quickly if they're cold. So I have them on a mat down here so they're not on the cold hard floor. And my basement stays relatively comfortable. My kitties. You don't want it too hot though either. So if you want your compost outside and you live in the south or in the summer, you don't want them outside. They'll just roast and they won't produce anything. More than likely they'll die. Out in the cold in the winter out here, they would freeze to death. Especially in a bin like this where it's not totally full. Maybe if it were full they would be okay. But honestly, they're probably not going to survive. And I don't want to kill all my wormies. I like my wormies quite a bit. So that is my little take on vermicomposting. I have loved vermicomposting and I cannot wait to add this to my garden. I can't wait to use it, and it is going to add so much nutrients to my garden. It's going to be amazing. Any questions, please feel free to comment below. I will answer any questions I can get to. And please like and subscribe. And join me on the next one. Thanks.